Goldilock Bears podcast with Vincent Cloud.
John Nemitz.
And David Lauer.
And this is the show where we love and hate and we feel indifferent to things and we talk about them and we call them topics. There's like 9 topics, 3 each. But before we do any of that good stuff, we like to bring up the fucking past and pick at old wounds in a segment we call the Deja Fuse. Go ahead, John.
Oh man, and am I ever wounded by this one? Road closures. I'm on my backup route for biking into work, and now that was closed. And
No.
I'm like, this is like a main road. There's no way this will be closed for more than like a day, and it's been like 2 weeks now. And my options are to go on this like busy road that has no bike lane, which I'm afraid to do and don't do, or add like a mile onto my ride so I can like go on actual like bike trails and stuff. So I do that, and it's actually a nice ride as far as like there's nobody around you and stuff. But then I get a ways on that trail, and then that trail is closed, and I had to go on a detour around that. And then I got to another area. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go on this one instead. And then that one was closed. Like, what's going on here? Are they targeting me? Probably.
Is there like an Apple Maps for bike trails?
Um, yeah, like so actually like Google Maps does a good job that if you say you're biking, it routes you on bike trails and where there's bike lanes and stuff when it can. And then there's also like trail specific apps. I think there's one called like All Trails or something like that that I've used before. But yeah, that's more meant for just like recreational bike riding rather than like plotting out a route to a destination, but still can be useful.
And Dave, are you still gladly parking in no parking bike lanes? Because you were
No.
before.
Was I?
Yeah, that was. Oh my God. See, this is why I tell you, watch the show so you know what you've said.
Dave might have received a thumbs down from me if he was in his car while parked in the bike lane.
All the way in Oklahoma.
Yep.
Trying to remember where that was. I don't remember where I did that. But I'm sure I had a good reason.
I think you just said you would be likely to do it, and you saw it as analogous to using the handicap stall in the bathroom,
Okay.
which you said you would push someone in a wheelchair out of the way to rush to that handicap stall. I might be paraphrasing.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
if they're in a wheelchair, it's basically designed to be pushed. So they're basically asking for it at that point.
we could make up so many things that you said, Dave, because you'll never know.
I'm pretty sure
don't
that
remember
I
saying
only
that,
go
but-
in the bike lanes when I'm trying to like if I'm at a stop sign or a stoplight and I'm turning right, but there's only one lane, but I'm just gonna block that bike lane because I want to turn right.
That's fine. I think that's within the regulations of the streets. I'm talking about people like, um, I'm going into this house for 5 minutes, so I'm just gonna like pull over in the bike lane and put my hazards on and get out of the car.
So, John, do you consider yourself street smart? Because you are on the streets a lot.
I mean, I've survived this long, so I must be.
All right. Well, let's get the show started. Actually, we'll go with John again. I think you have to start this one off.
All right. I'm gonna go in a less athletic direction away from bike riding and into a more nerdy direction and talk about my love for classic 8-bit computers. Um, so these are like ones from like the 1970s and 1980s. You weren't really hooking them up to the internet or anything. Like they're pretty much standalone, and they were really only meant for hobbyists and mostly people only played like games on them, and that was it. Um, I'm not a big fan of the gaming on them. Like that was kind of before games got good, I would say. Like there's some like that can be fun to tinker around with for a little bit, but um, like this is, if you think of the original Nintendo, I'd say that's kind of on the end of the 8-bit era as far as like video game consoles anyway. And like the early games are okay, and there's definitely some fun games on there, but they don't hold up as well. But what I do like about them is that as someone who isn't a computer scientist or super into that, like as a hobbyist, I can kind of have a good understanding of how the entire system works. And I've actually done like programming for those on the level of like you're actually pretty much writing instructions for like that the processor itself understands. That's like really just shoveling around individual bytes of data and like adding them together and then moving them somewhere else and then pulling in other bytes of data and doing other things and moving them around. Like it's a very different way of thinking about programming, and it's like the only way to do anything that has decent performance on those computers. Um, so it's just, to me, very interesting how that all works, and then fascinating how much like intimate knowledge all these programmers had of each individual system and how they worked. And they're like taking advantage of like weird quirks or sometimes even bugs in the way that the hardware worked to make their games better and more interesting. And I think that's great. My own personal experience of it is that when I was a kid, we inherited this TRS 80 color computer from my cousins because they didn't really know how to use it. And honestly, like at the time, I didn't know how to use it either because we didn't have like all the accessories for it. Like I would write simple like basic programs and stuff, which is a much easier programming language than what I was talking about before. But now, like as an adult, I've taken it back and I actually got like a tape cassette recorder for it, like literally the same cassettes you would listen to music on. You can store programs and stuff on there. So you can like write more advanced programs and save it on a tape and then play it back into the computer later to pick up where you left off and everything. And that was not very useful for anything, but I think just interesting from a programming standpoint. And then another popular one from that area is the Commodore 64. One year, in the middle of the year, I was missing my Advent of Code stuff that we've talked about on a different episode. And I actually was like, oh, I wonder like how many of these programs you could solve using like, one of these ancient computers from that era. So I like started writing answers for or like programs for these in assembly on the Commodore 64. And I think I got like through the third day or something, and I'm like, okay, this is super tedious, and I'm maybe like hitting the edge of what my ability are going to be here anyway. But that was a super interesting experience to me as well. But yeah, I guess like what it really comes down to is just like with a modern computer that's just so everything's so abstracted and so complicated. Like I never have any hope of understanding really even at a high level how all these components work together. Like you have to be so specialized now to work on anything, but back then you could kind of understand everything to some degree.
So is it like like an old car, like how some mechanics are like, oh, it's easier to work on this old car. Okay, but do they
Yeah, that's
still
actually a very good analogy. Yeah.
but do they produce those 8 bits anymore, or is it just whatever exists, that's all now?
They do actually. It's mostly for like the hobbyist market. So like I'm getting it because I have an interest in these ancient computers, but I want something that, like is gonna have parts that I can replace in it. So they've made new versions of them with parts that you can actually still buy today. But like a lot of like simple toys that do electronic stuff have like these little 8-bit processors in them. Um, and the code for them is written very similar to how you would write code on like a Commodore 64 or something.
Yeah, I
I
don't
remember
fuck with computers.
when I was a kid, like I always heard about Commodore 64, and I was like, yeah, I would hear about that, and I would hear about like Atari,
Mhm.
and I was always thought Commodore 64. I always wanted one because I'm like, oh, it's 64 bits. But then when I saw like what the games looked like, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
in my head, I was like, it's going to be amazing graphics because I knew the Nintendo Entertainment System had an 8-bit, and then like Atari was, I don't know, there was a couple different versions of Atari, like the 2600, 5200, something. I'm not sure if they were both 8-bit or one was less or more or what. But I remember hearing about them and like, but that was always like, it was before my time, but also like, I didn't have any money as a kid to like be able to buy that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah. And just to circle back, that the 64 meant it has 64K of memory.
oh, okay.
Which was impressive at the time and is um like extremely laughable these days.
I remember thinking like the Commodore 64 was like a regular like video game system, but then you see like it doesn't have a game controller. It's like a keyboard, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, and it has like a joystick attachment that you can get, but even then, like
Okay.
not like a gamepad controller.
Okay, so real quick, could you, if you wanted to design a game on an old computer like that, if you wanted to?
Yeah, you certainly could. You're definitely limited in with a lot of restrictions. Like you can only have like 4 different colors on the screen at the same time. You can, like your entire play area is like, I don't know, something like 200 by 300 pixels. Um, so, everything's going to be really blocky. Um, but yeah, like one thing I played around with is like building, like I programmed a tile editor. So I would basically, um, you know, build like a 8 by 8 or whatever it was, 16 by 16 tile, with like selecting the colors I wanted and what I wanted it to look like. And then it would like output what the hexadecimal code would be to store that tile in your game or whatever, so that you could pull it up later.
I think there's a bit of a market for it. Wasn't Minecraft like really shitty graphics or whatever, trying to duplicate that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, it definitely duplicates it from like an aesthetic, but it's a very modern and complicated programmed game, like in reality. And there's a lot of like kind of pixel art style games that are meant to like look like an NES or a Super Nintendo, but you could not actually make those games on that system. Like they're made in very modern ways.
I want the John Nemett's John Craft or something. I don't know. You should try and design, you should try to design a game on the like, that would only specifically work on those old computers. And I'm sure there's some sort of market there, like old school computer people that are like, oh my God, this brings me back. Yeah.
Yeah, this 80s nostalgia crowd.
Oh my gosh, yes. And this should be a future love. I think I really do like 8-bit music or whatever it's called. What is it called?
Oh yeah,
Chip
like chip
tunes or
tunes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that should be a future topic. Um segue program a blocky looking segue.
Can you control alt delete this topic?
Go to end.
Go to end. Damn it. Dave, you wanna go? You wanna go,
uh
bro?
yeah, let's go. I know this is gonna get you
Let's
fired up, Vince,
go.
but I am totally indifferent to 80s nostalgia. All
What?
right. As a product of the 80s myself. So I was at the outlet mall in Oklahoma City like a month ago, and there's like on like the outside, there's like all the shopping mall, all the stores, but on like one of those giant like concrete walls, there's all this like painting, and it's just like some woman wearing 80s clothing and a boom box and 80s hair, and there's an 80s guy wearing 80s clothing. And I'm just looking at it and I'm just like, I don't care. And I think it was like outside of like the cafe court or something. I think they were going for like an 80s aesthetic to the cafe court. But it did nothing for me. And even like I remember when I was a kid, like in the 90s, we had like the Wonder Years was a TV show, and that was nostalgia for like the 60s when my mom was growing up. And then as I was like getting older, we had that 70s show, which is a super popular sitcom. And my mom was super nostalgic for that. So like my mom was always nostalgic for the 60s and 70s, but like as as a grown up now, like I don't if I see something like Stranger Things takes place in the 80s, I don't care. They did like a season of American Horror Story in the 80s. I don't care. Like there's definitely like there's movies from the 80s I really like. There's music from the 80s I really like. However, like I don't know. It doesn't really do anything for me. Maybe I'm just a little bit too young for it. I was born in 86. Um but at the same time, I don't feel nostalgic more towards the 90s than the 80s. Like, and I just feel like in pop culture and everything, we're kind of just like hit over the head with nostalgia all the time. And it's probably a product of that where I'm kind of indifferent to it because I just see it everywhere and it like, oh, this means nothing to me now.
I think it's the like I like some 80s stuff, but it is like how long have we been going through this 80s trip? It seems like it's been going on for a long, like almost 2 decades, it seems. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember Kanye West came out with a lot like his 80s inspired album, like early 2000s, I want to say. Or maybe mid. But there's like the Strokes, they've been like stuck in the 80s like this entire time. And I think like I keep waiting for it to move on. And they're saying like 90s is now going to come into the nostalgic part of our lives, but 80s is still there. And yeah, you mentioned Stranger Things. I'm like, I don't care that it's like, oh, get it, Goonies, get it, Ghostbusters. I'm like, yeah, but so what was that one show, The Goldbergs? That's all that movie or that show was like, oh my God, the 80s and
Remember the
stuff.
80s?
Yeah, I don't know. That should be a future topic in general, just nostalgia in general.
I
But
will say I did like Stranger Things. I watched at least the first three seasons. But I just thought it was a fun, like, like action adventure show. I didn't particularly care one way or the other about the 80s-ness of it all.
Yeah, I agree. Like the show itself is good, and like the characters and the story was good, but yeah, the setting in the 80s,
Winona
like that
Ryder is
meant
great
nothing.
in it.
Yeah.
Where's my son?
I remember I wanted to be those Christmas lights she was hugging all the time. Oh, okay.
Uh,
So I think with the 80s stuff, it seems like people from the 80s are the ones that can't seem to let it go as well. I don't think it's just new generations. I think it's the kids won't let that shit go. We're still upset. I'll say it. We're still obsessed with our toys. Like I'm gonna talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because they're from the 80s. And there's so many people that are like, you should be grown up by now. Like we're all three of us are almost in our 40s, and there's people our age that just have not grown up. They still look so fondly to that. And what's so funny, I think, is when old generations try to picture the 80s, it's like everyone has a poster, everyone's wearing the trends, when really it was kind of dirty. It looked like the 70s still. Like I remember it wasn't.
exactly.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that because like the best representation of the 80s I've seen in a modern TV show was the the thing with Jeffrey Dahmer on Netflix, where like everything just looks like the 70s, but like old and dingy and dirty. I'm like, that's what the 80s was. Like, it wasn't all these bright, flashing neon colors. And like, there was a little bit of that with some stuff, but a lot of it was like dark and dingy and kind of gross. And like, that's what I remember at least.
I was barely forming memories in the 80s. Like I was born in 85, so like, I don't remember much before 1990.
Wow. Well,
But
like
I
I
do
remember.
feel like
Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say that like the real nostalgia, like if you look at like the 70s, it was just a bunch of old rundown shit from the 60s. Like you have the remnants of the past still, but in pop culture and like movies and music and stuff, you just see like this new bright shiny looking 80s stuff, and it's like it doesn't really look like that.
The shoulder pads. I hated the shoulder pads from the 80s. I do not care for that look, especially on a woman. I don't know why. Oh man.
I hated 80s music when I was younger, like in high school and stuff. Like I liked 80s punk, but like when the pop stations would do like 80s flashbacks or stuff, like I hated it. I didn't like any of that music. There's some stuff of it that I like now. Um, the cream has risen to the top, but um like at the time I didn't really like it at all. Um, and honestly, like for a long time, I didn't really give like 80s action movies a lot of, or like horror, a fair shot just because it just seemed like 80s cheesy bullshit to me. And similar there, like there's a lot of movies now that I've watched and enjoyed, but I've been able to spare myself all the like mid-tier stuff and like watch only the ones that are like the really good examples of that, I would say.
Yeah, I would say I definitely prefer to watch movies. I'm the same way. I didn't like to watch movies from the 80s, but now I like to watch movies from the 80s, but I don't want to watch a modern movie that's about the 80s because
Mm.
it's off and it doesn't feel right. I'm like, I'll just watch a movie from the 80s and then okay, then I'm like, okay, that's what the 80s look like. It's like we made a million movies back then. Like just watch those.
I think the only movie I liked that was about the 80s that worked was Donnie Darko. You know, that's about
Yeah.
it, because they weren't, not everyone was wearing bright neon colors and stuff, and not everyone had the Mohawk John, you know. But oh my God, I gotta say, hair metal, I still can't get into it. Maybe
Yeah.
Motley Crue, but they seem to be the exception in a way. But like, yeah, it's so hard to get into hair metal. They had one of the laziest drums It's just this bam, bam, and it's just that pace or that
Yeah, I mean, a
rhythm or
guy with one
whatever.
arm could do it.
Oh my God. And girls love the 80s. Like fucking you mentioned Def Leppard to a girl, she's like, oh my God, shit like that.
I was just gonna say Def Leppard is one of my least favorite bands ever. Like all of their music is so bad. Um, my all-time like least favorite band or like group is Hall and Oates. Like all of their music is so bad. Like I hate it, but they're insanely popular. I don't get it. Like it's just horrible to me.
I like synth, the synth wave stuff. I've really grown to like that. I like more modern stuff because it's all about like that's all nostalgia. Like, do you remember these little synths in these movies? Well, it's just gonna be that the whole time. And I really like that. That's like a future love is a synth
Yeah,
wave.
like Depeche Mode is a band from them that I have grown to love. Um, one of the great examples of 80s music, in my opinion.
I think the guy with like the plastic cone hats.
Oh, Devo?
Oh,
No, but
Devo. Okay.
Devo I enjoy a lot also.
Do they
Okay.
have more than just with it? Are they good?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, what's that album? Puck Monster Cells, I'll look it up.
Okay. 80s movies though, Dave, I gotta say, when like I liked like Gremlins, fuck yeah. Ghostbusters, fuck yeah. There's a lot of really good or there's cool 80s movies. I think the more mature, the better crafted movies were from the 70s, but the 80s, it was all about like what do you call it? The stock market, getting rich quick, and there was this laziness because we had all this technology to us and stuff. I like that 80s sort of lax feeling when you watch movies done in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, like one of my favorite movies is Ferris Bueller's Day Off from the 80s. And just like the 80s vibe is great in that movie.
Yeah.
And like and just like to reiterate, I don't dislike the 80s. I just don't like the modern nostalgia that we're hit over the head with about the 80s because I'm like there's so much great stuff from the 80s. I'll just watch that stuff. Like I don't need to watch a modern movie about that stuff. I don't like I don't hate like the more modern music, like where they're like, oh, this has an 80s feel to it and it sounds kind of 80s. I'm okay with that because I don't know. I feel like a lot of the music from the 80s sucks. So like if they were to rehash or like kind of redo certain styles from the 80s, you could actually do it better now with computerized like the synth stuff where it's all computerized and you have like really great DJs and music producers who can like really utilize those like different styles and actually make better stuff with it nowadays.
All right, John.
What
We've
am I
seen
looking at? Devo?
Yeah, the
Depeche
Devo
Mode.
album I really like. Q, Are We Not Men? A, We Are Devo.
I like look at that hat. Is
What
that
does it stand for? De-evolution?
Yeah, it does.
whoa.
Nice.
Wow. Shit. Okay. Um, what else about the 80s? The toys, like this kind of goes back into Ninja Turtles, but like fuck man, I had uh Turtles, G.I. Joe, He-Man, Transformers, and like it's so weird. I always think I must have been a little shithead growing up where I'm like, I don't have anything. And looking back, I had so much. Like I was damn near spoiled the more I think about it. Yeah.
80s video games, of course. Rubik's Cubes.
Yeah.
Um, the rest.
I I don't know. Would you guys go back to the 80s? Do you think it was that cool, or you'd be there, you're like, well, I gotta go to work now, thanks. Maybe Devo's on the radio, but that's about it.
Like I
No
would go for like
internet.
a vacation of like, 2 or 3 weeks, but I wouldn't want to live there because like we all remember back in the day before the internet, there was just like there was always that one guy who knew everything but he just acted like he knew everything. He didn't really know shit. But like you're like, so and so said so, and you're like, yep, I heard it. I knew a guy. I knew a guy who was there. And he like people would just talk shit, make up stories, and like tell you something was the truth, and you'd be like, well, I guess it's true. And then you had no way of fact checking anything. You're just like, oh, I guess it's what he said. But then at a certain point, you're like, I don't think we can trust that guy. And you're kind of talking behind his back, like, that guy's full of shit.
Yeah,
You had
it's
to
so
spend so
weird.
much time on your landline talking to people.
There, I don't know. There's a bit of simplicity there about like not having a phone all the time that maybe had its appeal. Maybe. I don't know. I think having a cell phone is like a it's very convenient. I don't love it. I barely spend any time on it, but the idea is like, oh, if my car breaks down, I could just whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, I that's kind of my favorite part about that nostalgia. But like I'll go camping now, and when I go camping, like I don't use my phone. Like I'm not answering calls, text messages. It's like my like I'll have it, but I'm gonna leave it behind like half the more than half the day, and I'm not gonna look at it. And like that's kind of the point of camping is to kind of disconnect and not look at my phone and not watch TV. Like when we're bored, we're gonna play, skip bow or Uno or a game of cards. Like that's our entertainment. Like other than that, like you're just disconnecting from the technology, and I do enjoy that.
When you said skippo, I was thinking of the skip it, the thing where you put around your ankle and you have to jump over it. That's a
I'm too
dangerous kind of
uncoordinated
camping
for
trip.
that.
Uh, 127 hours. That's what happens to you if you don't bring your cell phone into nature, Dave.
I haven't seen it. That's a happy ending, right?
Oh God. Yeah, it has a happy ending. He gives himself the stranger. Oh my God. All right, we're
Uh,
totally anything else about the 80s? Anything rad we could think about?
I think we should just go to your topic and talk about Ninja Turtles.
Oh my God. Should we go right to the turtles? Because I will.
Yeah,
All right,
let's
let's
just
talk about
yeah.
it. I
Keep it
love
going.
TMNT. All right. To me, it's better than TNA. Uh, well, I've probably gripped more turtles than boobs, come to think of it. But like I grew up with all the Ninja Turtle toys. I'm young enough to remember watching, what was it, Express USA or something like that. But they had all those great cartoons. I'm talking He-Man and G.I. Joe and stuff. But anyways, Ninja Turtles. Grew up watching the cartoon. It was great. I could get in about those characters, but um the movies, I love those first two movies. I haven't seen the newer versions, although I heard they're pretty good. Um Pizza, they love pizza, I love pizza. And then also when you're playing as them, you have the weapons. The best one to recreate was Donatello because you would just have to get a giant stick as a bow staff. So I went from I want to be Leonardo, you know, Leonardo to I'll be Donatello because it's just easier to recreate and stuff. Um, I could talk about there was a commercial though in it was yeah, kind of after the episode, but right before it left, they would have like a hey kids, remember to turn off the electricity or something like that, right? I still to this day think of when someone's opening the fridge and they're like, huh, what to eat, what to eat. And the other guy's like, hey man, close the door. Like, don't you know it's electricity and stuff? I think of that every time I have the door open and I'm looking, I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta close this. Uh damn, I love the Ninja Turtles. I could go deeper, but how do you guys feel about them?
When I was a kid, I always thought they were kind of dumb and never got into them. To be completely honest.
Oh, you shred
Um,
head.
I never like I saw a few episodes of the cartoon, but it wasn't my favorite. I always was more a fan of like the funny cartoons. Um, and I I watched the original, like the first live action movie, um, like a year or so ago for the first time. It was better than I expected. I enjoyed it. Um, Also, I do want to watch the Mutant Mayhem one that just came out, just because like the animation looks really cool, but I haven't yet.
Dave, which one was your favorite turtle?
It evolved. Like it was always Leonardo. Um, and then I had the Ninja Turtles game on the NES. So then it turned into Donatello because he had that long stick and it was like the best weapon. So he was like the best character to be on that game. But then when I would play like Turtles in Time and I watched the movies more, I started to like Raphael more. And he had like I think it's called a sai, like two, they're like little swords with like three prongs on it. Like those things were awesome. Like as I got older, I started to like him because it was like I realized it was too mainstream to like Leonardo or Donatello. Like in Michelangelo, he was like the really dumb like guy who loves pizza. He was kind of a ditz. So like Raphael
A
was my
himbo.
yeah, himbo.
Same here though, Dave. Like I, started off liking Leonardo, and I think it was mostly because, I was the oldest, and like all the siblings, we were like, I'm this guy, I'm this guy. I'm like, I guess I'll be Leo because he's the leader and he's the oldest, and he's the one that has to be mature and shit. So it was begrudgingly Leo.
Like I when I was a kid, I did not have He-Man. I didn't even know what He-Man was until like the year 2000. No idea. I didn't have G.I. Joe. I didn't have anything. The only thing I had, well, I had three things. I had Legos, I had Lincoln Logs, and then I had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I had all the figurines. I had like this, my mom got at a garage sale. It was like this plastic, like toy gun that shot out pizzas, like little plastic discs that look like pizzas. And it was green in color. And then you would shoot these little things. It was just like a spring loaded thing. And we'd shoot these little plastic pizzas out of it. And it was like one of my favorite toys because I could, just use it and shoot it at my sisters and they'd get mad. But I had those toys. I had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pajamas that I would wear. I had suspenders that had like a turtle face on the back, and if you push it, it like squeaked or something.
Squeak like a
Um,
turtle.
yeah, I guess it's the sound they make if you squish them.
Oh.
Uh, but like the newer Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies, like I look at those and I'm just like, no. I'm like, I like my old original ones, but I haven't watched them since I was a kid. So like I haven't gone and rewatched them again, but like in my head they're cool. And I'm like, I love those when I was a kid.
The cartoon was pretty crazy. Like Raphael slowly took over as like, oh, he's really cool because of the movies. They like he was almost like the main guy in those movies. But in the cartoon though, Raphael is voiced by this great voice actor. He does Yakko in the Animaniacs. He also does Mighty Max from Mighty Max, but he's so sarcastic and so witty. But rewatching it, because my brother was living with me and he had the first seasons, I was watching it, and Raphael makes a lot of meta jokes like crazy. Like they're like, "Oh my God, the Foot Clan, they captured whatever, and they're probably going to get away." And then they're all being urgent. And Raphael's like, "Well, it's only a cartoon. Do we really have to stress about this?" We're like, "What?" He would break the fourth wall all the time. It was nuts.
Well, weren't the original comics like a parody of Daredevil or something like that?
Yes, yes. The same
Uh,
the same stuff that turned him blind turned them into big turtles.
and yeah, like instead of the like in Daredevil, wasn't like the bad guy clan like the Hand or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder if the comic has also like meta jokes, maybe. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Well, I think it was really more hardcore though. It was more like mature themes, I think, in that comic, because people like the movie, that first one, because there was a dark tone to that. Like it's really crazy how adult that first movie is, and then you watch Secret of the Ooze, which is more cartoonish and more for kids, but I fucking loved it when I saw that. Um, it was crazy too because April O'Neil in the second one, I'm like, she's not redhead like, canon, but I'm not complaining. Like I thought she was like really pretty.
Non-canonical,
Yeah.
non-canonical.
But my little kid, I'm like, my little kid brain and heart and whatever. I'm like, hey, she's pretty. Like she might be my first crush. I'm not sure though. Um, and then oh fuck. The in the movie, the first one, Corey Feldman voices Donatello. And so he's got that fucking, I can't do Corey Feldman, but that really kind of, hey man, damn it, I can't do it. But in the second one, they got a different voice actor, and it was nothing like Corey. He was just like, hey, I don't know, I can't do that either.
Hey guys, how's it
Hey,
going?
but I remember as a kid, I'm like, teenagers' voices change. It's fine. So I let it slide. It made sense in the world. Oh, and then a shout out to Secret of the Ooze when Super Shredder is hulking out, road raging and shit, and the dock's falling apart. Raphael's line of "It's all coming down." Brian and I would quote that all the time whenever we felt our lives were falling apart.
Which was often.
Yeah, enough where we could we were nearby each other. Yeah, what do you guys have to say about anything else about turtles? Oh, I guess my mom said that she would always hear us playing, like we had this big sand hill in the back and we'd leap off of it shouting turtle power. Yeah.
I just remember Shredder being voiced by James Avery, the guy who was the dad on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah.
And like I at first I always thought it was James Earl Jones, like it was Darth Vader, because it was just like there's Shredder and Darth Vader were like the same guy to me when I was a little kid, because they're just like scary bad guys with a helmet on. And like like when I found out that like it was the dad from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and then I went back and like watched the Turtles like TV show, it was so great. Like I loved it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is so cool.
The classic theme, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That thing was so good. And something that did suck though about it was the MPAA, maybe, I don't know, whoever is like, hey, that's too violent or whatever. They, after the first, either in the first season or after the first season, Michelangelo was no longer allowed to use his nunchucks. They gave him a grappling hook. So weird.
I had no idea. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is so bizarre. Yeah.
Dave, you mentioned the video games. Definitely the Turtles arcade game is always one worth hitting up. And didn't we play that recently, Vince?
That was Turtles in Time as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Classic stuff, man. Vernon, remember? He worked at the station with April O'Neil. It was like, April, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was very much like Kevin Kline.
Those video games were great. And like I remember playing that like the side-scrolling game at the arcade, and you get two players, and it was perfect. It was like, oh, who are you gonna be? Who are you gonna be? And then you'd pick your player, and just the side-scrolling, you put in 50 cents, and then you get 3 lives or whatever. It was so much fun. I freaking loved it.
Yeah, and like you would choose from one of the four players, like like even never having played the game before, knowing what you're going to get because they have such like distinct attributes already that are known.
Yeah, and I just love like when you needed to pick up health for your character, you're just picking up a pizza. So it could be like a pizza slice or a half a pizza or a full pizza.
Oh, Bebop and Rocksteady, they were played by two of the turtle actors. I think Donatello played Bebop and Leonardo played the other one. What was it? Rocksteady, yeah.
Steady. Oh,
Yeah,
don't you hate that?
damn it. Again, I could keep going on and on. For example, did you notice that in Ninja Turtles 2, it was so weird that the two creatures that Shredder creates to fight the turtles were not Bebop and Rocksteady, but instead Toka and Razor, two created characters for the movie, a wolf and a snapping turtle, not the rhino and warthog. Yeah, isn't that weird?
That is weird.
Like, why do that? I mean, even though I like those characters, but it's like, come on, they were right there. Bebop and Rocksteady. David Warner was in Secret of the Ooze, and he's always been in my cool book. I swear to God, like that guy's cool for the to the end of time because he was the scientist in that movie, and he gave that movie, I don't know, credit or he gave it gravitas or something. It made it feel more special than it was having that British actor in that movie. It was great. All right, I guess we should go.
I'm seeing here on Wikipedia that Fred Armisen played drums with Devo in 2018 at Burger Boogaloo.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought like back in the day or something like that. And they're like,
No.
you can't drum for shit, man. Why don't you go make some jokes? He's like, I will.
You're a joke.
Uh,
Oh, interesting.
I feel like if there was like a celebrity that I could like hang out with for like a week, it would be Fred Armisen.
A
And
week?
just,
I don't know, man. Like, I
I
can't
wanted,
imagine him saying one serious thing that entire week.
I know, I just wanted to be like hanging out with the character from Portlandia for a week. Just
Which
every like 20 minutes, he's gonna change his personality, be a different person.
all right, all right. The segue challenge.
Speaking of movies such as Teenage Ninja Newton
Ninja.
Myrtle.
Newton figs, big Newtons.
Oh,
Um, I am indifferent to movies having subtitles or television. Um, so the ways I like subtitles are going to be like if you're watching a foreign film and the English dub is really bad, like I have no problem watching the original audio, turning on the subtitles, treating that movie like a book. No problem. Um, in fact, in a way, like it kind of forces you to pay more attention to movies because it's so easy to just like look at your phone and kind of half-ass pay attention, and then at the end of the movie, be like, "What that movie wasn't that great." But like when you actually have to read everything, it forces you to actually be looking at the screen instead of just kind of getting the gist of what's happening. However, like what I know it's like pretty common these days for kids and adults to be just watching English language content with subtitles on, and I hate it. I find it so distracting. Like, um, I I cannot ignore it. Like, if there's words on the screen, like I'm gonna read it, and like no matter how like I actively try not to. Like, I don't want to read this. I just want to like listen to what they're saying, enjoy the movie. But then like you read it, like it always shows up before they say it. So you read it and then they say it. You read it and then
yeah,
they say it. Like I
that's the
hate it
worst
so
part.
much. Like and like I was watching something with friends and like one of the guys wanted to like have subtitles on just because he struggles to hear and understand what they're saying. And I'm like, my vote is against it, but you know, we can do it if everyone else wants it. Um, but like with comedy, it's the worst because like you never get to hear them like deliver their punchline in like in a surprising way. It's always like, oh, I already read what the punchline's going to be, and then they say it. Like I don't know how people like that unless they're just really that bad at hearing or something. I don't know what it is.
What you just described was how I feel Family Guy is. They're like, hey, we're going to tell you the punchline and what the joke's about. Then we'll show you the joke and the punchline. Hey, Family Guy. Hate it. Dave, subs or dubs?
I okay, so I generally will have subtitles on most stuff I watch. Um, I was watching House of the Dragon recently, and like the Game of Thrones spinoff, but I had to turn off the subtitles because you would see what they were gonna say before they would say it, and that like if once I see that, I'm like, okay, they don't have good subtitles for this, I'll turn it off. Um, but the problem is when it they would have the subtitles on there, all of a sudden, uh, Rhaenyra is talking to Daemon, and they're talking in High Valyrian, so that they have subtitles, and the subtitles are covered up by another subtitle that says "Speaking in High Valyrian." So I can't read the TV show subtitles because the app subtitles are over the top of them, blocking them, and I'm just like, what the hell? And then the scene's over, and I'm like, I have no idea what they just said. I'm like, I have to turn off the subtitles, rewind it a minute, and rewatch it, and it was a pain in the ass. Yeah, there's a million reasons to hate the subtitles, but subtitles, I believe, are important for certain movies just because whoever is doing the sound direction, sound design for a lot of movies nowadays, they're terrible at their jobs. Like the sound effects are so loud, the music in the background is so loud that I can't hear what these people are saying. Like, and it's not all the time, but it's often enough where the music is playing and they're saying something, and I'm like, what did he say? And it's just easier to just have the subtitles on the bottom, and I will ignore them until there's something that is said that I didn't understand, and then I can look down and see it. But I don't know, it's kind of a catch 22. It's like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
I think
Yeah, that's a good point.
Go ahead.
And I end up like I watch a lot of movies like with headphones on. Like I can pair my Bluetooth. Like I have a little dongle that I pair with the TV, and I just use these headphones to watch movies on TV, and that just helps a lot to be able to hear better. But yeah, you're right. Like the movies, like they mix them if you're sitting in like a Dolby theater with 14 speakers, and you want the loud stuff to be loud, and like all that stuff. But then like that's not really conducive to at home viewing with like just your TV speakers or just a couple speakers next to your TV or whatever. It just sounds like shit.
I didn't know this guy, but I knew of him, and he wrote what do you call it? Closed captioning for TV, I guess. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But I was a kid, and I didn't talk to this man. He was like, I don't know, 40 or something like that. So I was just like, oh, that's kind of cool. But it is funny when you put on the TV and for some reason it's closed captioning, and like there's misspellings that just drives me nuts. Like, oh, you had one job. But it seems, from what I can tell, I don't know if I've read this or heard about this or whatever, but they almost do it in real time. Is that
Yeah.
right? Doesn't that
I know
seem
they
so
used
bizarre?
to, because I remember watching like Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien, and the subtitles, like randomly they would like stop, and it was like the person lost their place, and then all of a sudden they would just pick up, and then they would start typing. But then, yeah, like some of the words would be misspelt, or like when they said like the name of like a city and a place, and they didn't know how to you know, they didn't know how to write out the name of the city or the country. It would kind of just be like blank, and then all of a sudden they would just pick up again.
Yeah. Or like with movies, sometimes like the subtitles are created from like an earlier draft of the script or something. So like it doesn't even necessarily match up with what the actors end up saying, or if they like improv the line, or I don't know what causes it, but um like sometimes it's like just subtle differences, but sometimes it's like very different from what they end up actually saying.
I I think I would enjoy more anime if they were all subtitled and just in the actual Japanese voices or whatever, because that's one thing that's always been a thing that I couldn't get into was the voice actors, American voice actors, trying to match what these Japanese people are saying with the lips, and it just doesn't work sometimes. Or
Yeah.
like they try and reach these pitches, or just, what they find funny, maybe we don't find funny, and it just doesn't match. Them trying to match that energy, it just doesn't work. It almost always comes off as comical, but not in a good way. Yeah. Because what did we watch? Nausicaa, John, or what is it?
Hmm. Nausicaa of the
Prince of
Valley
the
of the Wind.
Yes. That was amazing. And that was done in their original voices or whatever. So I prefer that. And who knows, maybe I'd like Cowboy Bebop and all that stuff way better with just the original voices. Yeah.
I totally imagine that being true, having never watched a single episode. Just
Yeah.
because I don't know, those like shows, there's just so much of them that I'm afraid to dip my toe into it that, oh, I just lost the next 2 years of my life never watching anything else.
Segue challenge. Damn it.
I'm trying to like think how to make a spoken word joke about words being on the screen, but it's just not working.
It looks like our closed captioner is asleep at the wheel. Whoever is up. I think John again, or what is it? I
That
don't
was
even
me.
know. Oh, that was you. Oh my
That
God, I'm so
was.
terrible. Goldilock look behind, or Goldie look behind the scenes. I struggle a lot by remembering what order we go through, just because I'm just paying attention to what we're saying at the moment, you know. But I started doing this a couple episodes ago, where I would write a little initial for someone, and
Oh,
that
I
helped.
bet you love doing that.
Don't make me feel weird about it. But I'm doing that now. So here's a big J for John. And then it was Dave, right? So Dave's up.
Yeah. What do you want me to talk about? Traffic? That's super exciting. Let's we're just all gonna say what we hate about this, and then this topic will be over super fast. But
I've heard that one before.
This time I mean it. I hate tollways. Like, having to pay tolls for driving down a highway is absolutely insane to me. It doesn't make any sense. There's few things that you get right, but like the interstate highway system of this country is pretty damn good. It's one of the things that we have right. And the fact that like in every state is different, because in Oklahoma you have interstates that suddenly a section of it is just owned by a private company. And this private company, you have to be able to fund them, and they're not getting taxpayer dollars, or, well, they probably are, but they're also charging tolls for you to just drive on this, 30-mile section of their highway or interstate or whatever you want to call it, where it's 4 lanes or 6 lanes, and it's always between like two big cities. And like you can avoid it by going like an extra 12 miles out of the way. But the fastest way to get between like Tulsa and Oklahoma City, you got to go through some tolls. And they don't even have the toll booths anymore, where there's like, the minimum wage worker getting quarters. Like, all the tolls are like $4 to $5 to $8. They don't even have a person there accepting money anymore. All they do is just install cameras everywhere. So if you have a Pike Pass, then it will just charge your account. Or if you don't have a Pike Pass, they'll just take a picture of your driver's the license plate on the back of your car, and they'll send you a bill in the mail. And it's just like they have this whole thing set up, and they just send you a bill in the mail like, oh, you drove through this many times, that this is a price per time you went through. And it's just a bunch of bullshit, because we have states out there like Wisconsin doesn't have any tolls. They have this figured out. Can we all just like, the whole purpose of states, you hear a lot is like, well, if one state does something right and figures it out, then everyone else knows that's the right way to do it. Well, can people fucking figure it out? That's the right way to do it. Let's all match that model. But no, it's just every state is just their own stupid thing, and nobody changes anything. It all just stays their own stupid way.
The only thing I have to add that I loved was cameras being everywhere. That's great. What about you, John?
So, like in theory, it seems like the fair way to do it. Like these are the people using the road, these are the people adding wear and tear to it. They should be the ones paying for it. In practice, though, like somehow like toll roads are usually like shittier than like freeways for some reason. Like, and I think it's all because of what Dave said about it being like for-profit private companies who own them. So like they're incentivized, like when a state builds a road, they're incentivized to make a good product for their citizens. When a private company builds a road, they're incentivized to take in as many tolls as they can and put as little money as possible into the roads in order to increase shareholder value, which is the only thing that they're like legally obligated to do is to, maintain shareholder value. So yeah, in practice, it sucks. I've been going to Chicago like once a year for the past few years, and they definitely have a lot of tollways around there, and it's just somehow they have all my info, and I'll just like literally drive around for a week, and then I'll get an email that says like we're charging you this much, and it debits my credit card, and like I never have to touch anything actually. And like there's like this like iPass or whatever, like I for Illinois, that you can put on your car, but I never did that. So like I pay twice as much for my tolls as those people would, but I'm not there enough to warrant doing anything differently. But somehow I was just doing it all through just, yeah, like cameras and my license plate. And I created an account one time a few years ago, and it just kind of works. So it's not inconvenient, but it is annoying that I'm like paying extra money for these roads that aren't great. I do have a little nostalgia in the sense that I had grandparents in Michigan, and we would drive from Wisconsin down through Chicago, through Indiana, then up to Michigan again. And we'd always like go at night. So I just remember like sleeping in the back of the car, and we'd be slowing down and the windows would open, and my dad would throw a couple quarters into this big collector dish and stuff, and then the arm would go up and we'd go on our way. So like I just associate that with like, oh, we're traveling to grandma and grandpa's house. So I have a weird fondness for them in that way, but in every other actual way, I hate them.
Yeah, I think if it stayed that way and it was you were just paying 50 cents or a dollar, it'd be fine. But the fact that like the prices have gone up more and more. I went last fall on my honeymoon, we went out to Yellowstone National Park, and on the drive back, we're driving through Denver, Colorado, and I'm like looking at my app at the map, and I'm like, we're in like construction between like Denver and Fort Collins, which is north of there. And then you can like cut over kind of towards the airport, and it's a tollway. You got to pay to go that way. And I'm like, but it's way faster. I'm going to cut like miles off my trip, and I'm hauling a camper. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just pay the toll. Well, I go that way, and I never saw a toll anywhere. And I'm like, well, shit. I'm like, I don't know where. It said there was a tollway. I'm like, maybe it was like on the exits. Like when you take the exit, then they have the toll booth or whatever. And I never thought of it since then. But then a month later, I get something in the mail, and it was like, you owe $55. I like for each toll was like 10 to $12 because I was hauling a camper, and they charge you per axle.
Jeez.
So I had, two axles on my truck, and then there's one axle on the campers. Thankfully, it's not a big camper, but for going through like just this stretch of like probably 20 to 30 miles of highway, it was like $50. And I'm like, that's insane. Like, I did not put that much wear and tear onto that highway.
Holy shit.
Yeah. In the Twin Cities, they don't have any tollways, but they have like, like the fast pass. So like you can pay money and then you can drive in the carpool lane. Or sometimes they actually have like an express lane that's like kind of split off from the rest of traffic, and you can cruise a lot faster, which I've
I
never
like
done.
those. In California, they had those, and I thought it was cool. It was like the carpool lane, and you can go
Yeah.
in like the far left lane, and it was this where like people were always driving really fast, like sports cars. Like if there was like lots of sports cars around and they're driving super fast, like I wouldn't even go in that lane. I'm like, I can't hang. But then like every once in a while, I'm like, hey, there's no one over there. We got people in the car. Let's go over here. One thing I did like, you were talking about like the having the thing for the iPass in Illinois. When I lived in Hayward, Wisconsin, like we went down to Chicago, and my coworker she had like friends or family in Chicago. She's like, I have a toll booth iPass in my car. She's like, I'll take it out of my car. And it was like this little plastic piece with a sticker on it. And she's like, just take it, keep it in your car, put it on your hood or like on your windshield, and she's like, I've already paid for my year membership or whatever. She's like, that way you won't have to pay any tolls. And I'm like, sweet. And it was great because it was like hacked the system. You can't do that in Oklahoma because it's just like a very thin sticker that if once you apply it, if you try to peel it off, it will like break it, and it's not even usable anymore. So they kind of realized and caught on that people were probably doing that.
Wow, this is really rare case where people can share this. We better make that impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Netflix and sharing accounts. Right?
Oh my god, yeah.
Segue challenge. You guys got any change so we can pass?
Could all use a little change.
Okay, Smash Mouth. Okay, I think I'm up according to these crazy initials I have written down. So let's go
Why
real
are you
quick
talking
here.
about JD Vance?
Oh my God. Fucking a couch. Look at him go. Okay, so I want to do really quick. I hate shaving. And you might be like, wait a minute, Vince, aren't you Native American and they don't grow beards? Well, we're not supposed to.
Peach fuzz.
What do you mean you're
Well,
not supposed to?
okay, so I grew up and my dad didn't shave, but he would tweeze. I remember every once in a while he'd be like, "Hey Vince, help me with this," and I'd take the tweezer, and there was like a little hair he couldn't get to, and I'd pull it out for him. And and they told me they're like, "Vince, don't ever shave," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So they said, "Don't shave," and they didn't tell me how to not shave. So I'm like entering teenagehood, and I'm like, "Oh, there's some peach fuzz," and in a way I was kind of proud. I'm like, yeah, other my friends were talking about it and shit like that. But then that was fine, right? It was really
You see
fine
Vince's
hair.
face?
It was like really fine hairs, but they were still hairs, which was okay because it's like, so fucking women have, really fine hairs. It's fine. But every once it would in a while would be like a dark hair. And I'm like, oh shit, I should shave that. And there's another one, and there's another one. So against my family's wishes, I bought a razor and I fucked it up. I think I went sideways, like not the right way to do it at all. didn't know shit about aftershave. So my fucking face was just like, oh my God, what have you done? And stuff, you know? It was so painful and it hurt. And of course, after that, I got more darker beard hair or whatever, and just, you know, a little bit more with each shave. So we're not supposed to do what we're supposed to do is just pluck like what my dad was doing. So once I shaved that off, it all changed. It started coming in thicker, but I can't grow an actual beard. You wouldn't look at my beard and say that's more like an eared, or you know, it's not a complete beard. It's a beard or something, you know. It's terrible right now. And I hate shaving after I figured out how to shave. It's just something that just it takes so much time, and you know, some aftershaves aren't the same. Like they discontinued my favorite aftershave. That sucked. So now I use like this nap it's not napalm. Uh
Smells
some,
like
it's great smelling in the morning. It smells like fig tree. But yeah, I don't know. It just irritates my face. I wish I never shaved. I really wish I would have just tweezed, but they didn't. Whatever. What do you guys say about shaving?
I'm
John, do you love
confused.
this?
Like, shaving does not mean you're gonna grow more hair. That has nothing to do with it. Like, that's like an old wives' tale. Like, that's not like if you shave, it's gonna grow back thicker. That's just like a misconception or like a joke. And plucking beard hair with a tweezer, you'd literally be doing it for an hours straight because
No, no.
trying to get each little hair.
But again, they didn't like our hair isn't it doesn't grow the same. It's like it's very thin, it's very almost see-through almost, you know. It's not dark and shit. Like a lot of Native Americans, they don't grow beards or they can't, but those who do, it looks terrible. Look, it's a pathetic looking like goatee. Like my oh my God, my brother has a terrible one. And like literally, it's very rare to find a Native American with a decent beard, you know? It's fucking weird. It's crazy.
So what I've heard is along the lines of what Dave is saying, and you know, maybe it is different for us white men, but um, like the reason people think that shaving makes your beard come in thicker or whatever is because um like when it grows out, it's kind of like wispy on the end and not as thick. It kind of tapers off. But then after you shave, it's all like these coarse, like thick stubble coming out. So it gives the appearance of like, oh, this is thicker than it was before. But like you don't have more hair follicles or anything, and you don't have, you know, like more hair coming out or whatever, but it is like a coarser hair that's coming out immediately after you shave.
All right. Well, shaving though, how do you guys feel about it?
Hate it.
I fucking hate it. I'll do it like once a week. I'll like shave my neck. Like I'll trim my beard like every 3 weeks, but then I'll trim my neck just because I don't know. I always like to trim up my neck so it's a little bit more like tidier looking, just appearance wises. But yeah, I have to spend a bunch of money on razors and shaving cream. Not really shaving cream. Shaving cream's cheap. But like the razors and like I bought some like Dollar Shave Club or Harry's or all these stupid companies. They're all overpriced. You got to get like a this cartridges. They have like 5 blades on them, which is completely unnecessary. Like they used to just come with 3, but you can't even like find that shit anymore. Like it's minimum of 4. Sometimes I got 5 or 6. It's like just the amount of wasted resources. It's like I get that they're expensive because there's 6 blades, but like why don't you give me the alternative of just getting one with 2 blades or 3 blades?
What about those like safety razors or whatever, where you're literally just buying like the old-fashioned razor blade and like screwing it into a thing, and then I've never tried them, but I've heard people like them. And then those
I've
are
considered getting
super cheap.
those. I like, remember like in the Western movies when they just have like a flip open razor,
Oh, yeah, I'm not even talking about
and then
that.
it just kind of reminded me. And then they'd have like the piece of leather, and then
Yeah.
they're like, all right, and they would shave with that. I'm like, I almost want to just try that because if you had like a really nice sharp blade, it'd be kind of like a sharp knife, and then you could just sharpen it, once a month, and then just use that.
Yeah, I've always kind of wanted to have like a barber shave me, like where they put your head back, they put the hot towel on your face or whatever, and then they, take out the thing and do the thing. But never done that. I honestly like I can't even be bothered to shave my neck. Like basically after every time I trim my beard, I'll just like shave my neck like once a couple weeks after, just so my neck hair is shorter than my face hair, and call it good. Like I hate it.
When you did shave, yeah, when you guys did shave, I mean, were you like, oh, I can't wait till it grows consistent enough for a beard and that'll be my look?
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I feel like I've had a beard since like high school, pretty much.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't think I never really had a beard until like my late 20s. Then I started to. I would always shave for like I would always shave and then I would use like a trimmer, like clippers. So it wouldn't be like with a razor, so it was like down to the skin. There would just be like a little bit of stubble. And I would usually always just have a little bit of stubble. Because yeah, I didn't like the super clean shaven look, but like a little bit of stubble was fine. But then as time has gone on, I just like I don't care anymore. The only problem was in the year 2020 where at hospitals we were like required to wear masks and they're like you're not getting a good seal on your face if you have a beard, so all men with beards need to shave their beards, and like all of the bearded men like united and we're like no, we won't be told what to do, so like we all did
I'd
it like
rather die.
begrudgingly. Hell yes, if you don't want to get sick, don't come to the hospital, this is where all the sick people are. So we all just like shaved our beards, and then like a couple weeks later, they're like, the boss will, it's if they implement a new rule, they only like are going to enforce it for like a week or two, and then they'll forget about it, and that's basically what happened.
Yeah, when I went to my first like work conference, where there was like a ton of people there, I had heard that, so like I shaved my beard off. I was, clean shaven for the first time in, over a decade, and um wore the tight fitting N95 mask or whatever. And then I got COVID anyway, so I was like, what a waste. What a waste of a good beard.
I there's times when I really like, and I've said this, like I want a woman on this show, so maybe she could talk about beards. I actually want another Native American on the show to say, like, yes, Vince, our facial hair isn't the same as white guys' beards. The two of you just piling on, like, oh my God, you're ridiculous, it's stupid. I'm like, I'm just trying to describe how I experienced it, you know? Oh my God.
I believe your beard is very different from ours. But Dave and I have both heard of the myth of when after you shave, it comes in thicker.
I did.
I
So we're
just
just
I'm
relating those.
thinking of the Seinfeld episode. You literally have Seinfeld art behind you, and I'm thinking of like Jerry when he like shaved his chest,
Right.
and Kramer's like, "You shouldn't have done that." He's like, "I know." He's like, "I just started to trim around the neck, and then next thing you know, gone."
Oh man. Yeah, okay, so real quick then, like my dad never taught me. My mom said never do it. I did it under the cover of darkness. Who taught you guys to shave? Your dads or what? Did you practice
Um,
on a balloon?
yeah, I don't remember. Like I guess my dad must have shown me, and it's like, here's the shaving cream, son. I don't know.
Like I remember like my mom always had like razors everywhere, and I had two older sisters. They always had razors all around the bathtub because they would shave their legs in the tub. Um, and then like they saw like I took a razor out. They had like a pack under the sink because like even I knew I'm like I don't want to use one of those old dirty leg hair razors. So like I took one out, and then my mom said she's like, "What are you doing with my razor? Those are expensive. You don't need that." And I was like, "Well, I'm like I have like stubble, like peach fuzz." And it like it only grew on one side of my face and it wasn't on the other side, it was just on one side. And then like I had like a patch over here of hair, but it wasn't anywhere else. And I was like, I just need to shave this little bit. And I don't ever remember being taught or anything. It was just like I was just told like get your face wet, get the razor wet, and constantly have the faucet going and keep rinsing it off.
John, when you're, I just picture that moment where the dad's like, "Hey, hand me that wrench." You're like, "Oh, what's the wrench?" You panicking and shit. Hand me the razor. Like, oh, which one is the razor? Oh my gosh. All right.
My dad was notorious for when we were doing like projects like that out in the shop. He'd just be like, "Give me the," and I'd be like, "Yeah, go on the what?" And then after years of that, I've learned to anticipate what the thing was eventually going to be. But
You're looking at it and you're like, he's gonna need a crescent wrench. There you go.
yeah.
And you're handing him the tool. You're like, it's called a crescent wrench.
oh my god. Segue challenge.
I mean, that was the perfect segue into where you can't think of the
Oh,
word you need,
yeah, that's oh my
which I
gosh,
hate.
yes.
Um, this happens to me a lot in life. It's happened several times on this show. Last week I was struggling to come up with the word scalping in regards to tickets, and that really annoyed me. Enough that I'm like, this will never happen again. I need to talk about this. And it'll definitely happen again. But like English is a great language. We got a lot of words. And we very often have that word that's just like perfect for the concept you're trying to get across. And we also have a lot of words in the sense that there's going to be a lot that come close. So when you're like, oh, what's the thing that's like that, but it's also that, and people be like, oh, butterfly, and you're like, oh, kind of, but it's not that. And they'll be like, banana, and you're like, oh yeah, that's also close, but not exactly right. And sometimes like you literally just have to move on because like you're not able to think of the word and nobody else is able to think of it, and you're actually not able to express the thing you wanted to express properly. And then you can come back later and be like, oh, it was scalping. That's what the word was. But by that time everyone's moved on and then it doesn't matter anymore, and it's just a frustrating experience.
For sure. This was one of those times where I read the topics through our text. I'm like, damn it, that's good. Like that's really good because it's such a odd moment in your life that it's so bothersome. And then I'm trying to think of the times when I couldn't think of a word, and that just drives you nuts because you're like, well, you thought of that word. How would you remember that you couldn't remember it? I don't know. It's maddening. And damn it, before we did this, we were recording my movie recollection, and I still can't think of that word. God damn it. What do you got to say, Dave?
Yeah, I like this. It happens every day, like so often to me. Like I'm really bad at like I can't even think of the word right now. What is it?
A
What
curse.
like someone I'm very like not illiterate, but like I'm not very oh, I can't even think of it. But I will think of it. But like I'm not well spoken in any way. So I can't like recall words like half the time. So generally in conversations, I'll be very quiet. And if I want to say something, like I'll say it in my head, and then I'll be like, okay, I have to change what I'm gonna say because I don't know the words to actually say what I want to say. Um, and it's easier, and like I always think it's like super easy. I always, when I was in school, I really started to like write essays and write papers, because if I couldn't think of a word, I would just like kind of say something similar to it, and then I would just put like a star by it, and then I would move on. And then I would go back and I would read it, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to reword it this way, or I'm going to look in a thesaurus and I'm going to find something that's similar. And then once I found like the right word, then I would reword the sentence. And like, so writing was always fun to me because I had like the extra time to like be super nitpicky and find the right words. Where when I just have to speak, it's like I can't find those right words, and then I just have to like dumb down my version of what I need to say. And it's like I'm like a PlayStation 2, but I can't run a PlayStation 2's games. I have to run a PlayStation 1's games because there's less memory and RAM that is needed. And I just kind of like dumb down my own like vocabulary to fit like what I can say and not sound like a total buffoon.
You 8-bit bitch. Damn it. Oh, it's like a trivia. It's like trivia that you can't figure out, John. Like when you texted us, you were like, when you can't a word and you left out, or when you can't, oh shit, would you lose out? Think, right? You left
Did
that
I
out of
really?
the, yeah, you left it out of the
Oh, yeah,
text.
that's right. Hate when you can't of a word.
And honestly, that kind of drove me nuts. I'm like, wait, I know what it is, but why is it like bothersome? Because I want to put in there the word that you were thinking of, but I'm like, no, it's a joke. You'll kill it if you do that.
It wasn't a joke. It was an accident.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was like, John, you clever little guy. Um, yeah, it's that bothers me. Like it is something that like it's really hard for me to concentrate right now with you guys because I'm still trying to think of that word that my mom called me when I was impressionable. And I'm like, why would you say that to your own son? Oh man.
I
Yeah.
think the I inarticulate is the word I wanted to say, and I don't know if I said it or not, but I remember like when this is funny to me because like looking back, like remember when you like ask your parents something and they like explain something to you, and then you look back now like 25 years later, and you're like, man, my parents were dumb. Like they were wrong and I was right. Because like I remember like watching like George W. Bush on TV, and I was like, he seems really dumb compared to the other people. Like he's not very smart. And my mom was like, no, George W. Bush, he's smart. He's just inarticulate. So like he can't speak smart words or sound smart, but he is smart. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, I guess that makes sense. But then 25 years later, I'm like, no, he was kind of dumb. Like, he was inarticulate because he wasn't very smart. He just got the job because his dad had the job and he knew people in high places.
Well, I think your mom wanted to say all that, but she could just say, oh, he's not dumb. She wanted to say it was all, the dad, failed companies.
Yeah.
Oh man. Uh shit.
I was trying to think of that word.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm trying to think of some sort of challenge that we do
Oh
when I
man.
feel like
What
the
kind of challenge do we
conversation.
do? Like
Oh man.
like a transition challenge,
Transition
is that it?
challenge.
Is that what it
Sounds like something different.
is?
Is it Dave?
Yeah. I have a love, and I love music apps. Like I have Apple Music that I like. My wife has like a family plan for Apple Music. And you're able to add like 6 people on there. So like it's like me and my wife, and then like her friend, and then a couple cousins and her aunt. Like we're all on there, and you just have like unlimited access basically to like everything on Apple Music, and like almost all like major bands are on Apple Music. Like the Beatles held out for a while, but then they've eventually were on there. I think Garth Brooks is like the only artist I know that isn't on Apple Music. At least they weren't for like forever. Um, but so I love Apple Music. I think it's great. I love Spotify. Spotify has like great like people users playlists of like different styles of music, and you can go like on the internet, and like people would be like, "Oh, this is a really good playlist." And there's, 200 songs, or like, like 40 hours of music or something. And it's just people who created these playlists, and you're like, if you like that certain genres, you can find like really cool playlists to listen to. If you're just driving around or like mowing your yard or doing work around the house. It's awesome. I like even Pandora, like Pandora. That's awesome. I have like different radio stations that they don't, I don't know. Pandora doesn't it's not the best. It's probably one of the worst ones. But like I'll still listen to it if I just want to like listen to like a certain band. If I put in like My Chemical Romance, it will play like stuff from My Chemical Romance, and then other bands that were around the same time period, the same genre. And then, you can look at your phone and be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I've heard of that band." And then I'll go on my Apple Music and I'll search that band, and I'll add some of their songs to like my current playlist that I'm listening to. Um, but I love all these apps on my phone that I can listen to music with, because I like the struggle was real like back in the day. Like, and like when I was a teenager, I would always have like listen on like Saturdays or Sundays when it was what was that famous guy who had the top 40,
Casey
uh
Kasem.
Casey Kasem, yeah. And like I would have a cassette tape, and I would record like the songs of like, the top 40, and it was like so that way I could listen to those songs when I was, riding my bike on my like Walkman or something. And I remember like driving around and just listening to the radio stations, and it's always commercials. Like your local radio stations, there's only like two or three that were any good, and they're always like playing commercials, and you're like, am I going to listen to this crappy song or this crappy song? So like nowadays I have so much good music at my fingertips. Like all I have to do is like once in a while, I like to at least like once a week try and like branch out, and like it can even be like a band that I've listened to before, but like just go deeper and look into their catalog, where I'm like, Rage Against the Machine, like I've heard of them, I like some of their songs. Let me like look deeper into their catalog and just listen to random like stuff that because they have tons of songs. And then like I always inevitably like, oh man, I forgot this song even existed. And like all these music apps are great for just rediscovering stuff, finding new stuff. It's just it I don't know. I love music, and like it's just such a great way to like introduce myself to new stuff and find old stuff I forgot about.
You said Garth Brooks isn't on Spotify, right?
Apple Music, I
Apple
believe.
Music. What about Chris Gaines? Is he on there?
Let me search. I'm gonna guess
Been
no.
sitting on that one.
I know I have. I'm surprised it didn't fall off because I'm still trying to think of that word while holding on to Chris Gaines at the same time. That was very hard. Okay, so I out of all the apps that you mentioned, I've only checked out a few, but Pandora, is that the one that introduced like playing random shit based off of what you typed in? Or do all of them do that now or what?
They all kind of do that, but Pandora was like the first one to do that. Um, Spotify does it, and Spotify probably does it the best. Um, you can pay for like a premium, like with no ads. Um, which I've had in the past, and I thought it was worth it. I really liked it with no commercials. But yeah, you can, look up like Creed, and then it'll be like a bunch of like 90s like weird rock music like Creed. And if you hear something you like, you can hit the little plus sign, it'll add it to a favorites category, and then you can just go to your favorites category and just listen to those songs.
That sounds fun. Yeah, I have to get in on that. Um, Technically our show is on Spotify right now, but since the account I created to upload them, I created an account on a website, and that website is dead now. So I have no way to get to our episodes that are on Spotify. So I think the first season, quote unquote, is on there. I just can't do anything about it. Yeah.
That is too funny. I wonder if we can somehow just give them our RSS feed for like the other episodes or whatever, but we can figure that out later.
Yeah. All right, Jim.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy using those apps, like mostly for discovering new music. Like honestly, I mostly listen to music on vinyl if it's stuff that I like enough to own. So like my algorithm for the music apps never gets very good because it's always like I'll use it to discover new things, and then I might like it enough to go buy it, and then I never listen to it again on Spotify or I think I use Google Music now because you also get YouTube with no ads, which is really nice. Um, but um, I hear that it is really shitty for the artists on there as far as getting paid. So I feel like I have to call that out. Like it is um super convenient, but if there is a band you really like and you want to support, you should just like buy a t-shirt or something to throw some bucks their way.
Yeah, for sure. Like you got to buy a t-shirt, or like you got to watch them live, buy tickets. But if you watch them live, then who are you supporting? Ticketmaster.
Ticketmaster.
Oh,
Yeah, so just buy t-shirts and then listen to their music for free. And if you want to see them live, I don't know, make sure they're at a small venue that isn't sponsored by Ticketmaster, I guess. Yeah, I do, like I did that. I've done that with a couple bands where I've actually just gone to their website, and I did it recently for like an Australian band, like a heavy metal band called Parkway Drive. And I just looked at their t-shirts on their website, and there was like the coolest t-shirt I've like ever seen. And I was like, holy crap, this is awesome. And it was $35, and it's a great t-shirt, but
Yeah, but
it's
were those
like
Australian dollars?
the problem is it's our heavy metal rock band music, so all shirts are always black in color, and it's so hot outside. I can't wear the black t-shirt in the summer. It's too hot. I gotta wait for winter.
I thought you were gonna say like their t-shirts are crazy because like you got to the t-shirt, you're like, that's my Parkway Drive. How did they do that? That'd be freaky. Oh, is our podcast available on any of these music apps, John?
I don't know.
I mean, like we're on Spotify, but again, that's only the first season.
So I know like we're on Apple Podcasts. I don't know how that relates to their music app
Oh, okay.
at all.
Okay.
And like any of these apps that just pull in like RSS feeds, we're probably on there. Because like once you get on like the big major ones, they just kind of somehow spread out from there automatically. And I don't really understand how that all works. But we've shown up in like these podcast apps that I've never even heard of before, which is kind of cool.
Sweet. Anything else? Or
Oh,
should we?
John, you were kind of saying like the algorithms like don't really get to know you that well. Like I always listen to music at work, and I have like my work computer, but it's a shared workspace. So there's other
Oh
people who will use it.
yeah.
And like I was like listening to like the Avett Brothers or something. And then my coworker was like, "This music is trash. I hate this." So then they typed in like 98 degrees and like or and it was like playing in sync and they're liking stuff and I'm like, don't like that stuff, this is my account, like you're
Now
screwing up my
that's what I call
algorithm.
music. 14.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible. And they'll listen to like Rihanna and stuff like that and I'm like, don't do that under my account.
Gotta treat that algorithm kindly.
So real quick, any cool bands that you've discovered that you could like list off? You're like, oh shit, turns out I like this band, even though I've only heard a song, you know?
Um, like recently, like once I started to like Zach Bryan, then I started to like Coulter Wall. There was a playlist on Spotify that I listened to, and it's got a million different what is it called here? It's called Spooky Banjo Time, and it's like gothic country murder folk, and it's got 14 hours of music and there's a bunch of different artists and it's all just like acoustic guitars or banjos, like weird like country Americana style stuff. And like just I just listen to it and then I just have like my saved group of the stuff I like, but like I don't know the bands or like the names of these artists enough, but I was kind of like Wikipediaing like some of these people. I'm like, oh shit, I'm like, they played in Nashville in like 2002, they've been around for 20 years like doing music and I had no idea who they were. um but I mean, off the top of my head, no, I can't probably list like a bunch of names. I have to kind of go into my playlist and then pull it up from there.
I learned about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard from one of those apps. I don't remember which one it was at the time. I've gone through a few of them, but they were one of their albums was an early topic, and the OCs was another one that I got into through that.
The
I
OCs.
know uh Uncle Lucius is really good, and Pawns or Kings, they got some really cool stuff.
Oh shit. Uncle Lucius. Is that like a rebrand for Uncle Cracker?
It kind of sounds like just like the name itself, I'm just like, that sounds terrible. But it's they it's kind of like it's like an old who is it? Great White Buffalo is the name of a, like it's kind of a similar style to his music. Um I don't know if you know him, but I don't know, he's got cool sounding music.
Cool, cool. Segue challenge. Let's
Let's see where the algorithm takes us.
yeah. All right. So new artist is playing, and that's Vince. Let's see here. Oh, okay. My indifference to close up shop. This is the last topic, I believe. And I'm indifferent to people in mascot costumes. First of all, they don't talk. Isn't that weird? That's fucking weird to me. It's like I'm not comfortable with mimes. And like John, you mentioned this like in theme parks. Like, how do you feel about them? And I was thinking about it. Well, I always felt bad for them heat wise. Like they're probably just like, oh my God, it's so fucking hot. We're in a theme park here. I always felt bad for all those Disney characters. The kids are like, oh my God, it's Mickey Mouse. And inside, Mickey Mouse is probably just like sweating his ass off. You know, he's like, oh, I want a fucking cigarette, you know? Um, I remember my sister being freaked out. We brought her, it was a birthday and she was really young. And we brought her to Chuck E. Cheese. And Chucky, who was a giant rat, came out and she just screamed her ass off. She was so afraid of Chucky. I remember being in a Action City. It was a friend of ours' birthday, and she was like, we were in our 20s, so we were like full on adults having a pizza party in Action City, which is like a little arcade thing. And the mascot is a gorilla. and he had to bring out the pizza, and you could just tell with the way his shoulders were down, the way he carried himself, he was so depressed. Like there was no animation between, from him. He just handed us our pizza, and he was just like, oh god. Like we couldn't hear him, but you could tell he was just some fucking, probably someone younger than us, some teenager. He's like, god damn it, this sucks. You're all adults, what are you doing here? um Frank the Rabbit is the only cool mascot I've ever seen. That's the horror icon from Donnie Darko. Other than that, they're all freaky, but not in a cool way. You ever see furries? Like that whole fucking culture is weird because you can't really talk again, and you don't know who's there. You could be banging a guy or a girl, doesn't matter. You have no idea what they look like.
That's true. It doesn't matter.
But they're always weird looking. Magical Mystery Tour. If you ever looked at the cover for that, the Beatles are dressed up as like a rabbit, a walrus, a hippo, and a chicken or something like that. But it's freaky. It's freaky looking to see them. And then finally, The Shining. Remember that guy's like at the end? She's like running through the hotel, freaking out, and she sees some guy getting head from a guy in a rabbit costume. That was fucked up.
I don't
Yeah.
remember that scene. But
how do you guys feel about people in mascot costumes?
I never really thought about it much, but you talking about it made me remember one thing. Like, so I went to like a conference in Madison, Wisconsin a few years ago. And just as like an after hours event, we went bowling at like the university, they had a bowling alley or whatever. And for some reason they had like the Bucky the Badger mascot come in, and all these like grown ass adults like acted like it was the coolest thing that's ever happened. We're like, what? Why are you excited by this? Like, this is lame. Like, what? I don't understand what is happening. Like, it was just really bizarre to me. They definitely can be freaky to kids, but like, I guess at Disney, like kids really fucking love it. So I don't know. I never went to Disney or anything like that when I was a kid, so I never had that experience. I'm trying to think, like I don't really have memories one way or the other of like the Easter Bunny and that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm quite indifferent.
like I just remember anytime I would see someone in a mascot, it was the same way I felt about like a Santa Claus, where I knew it was just like a guy dressed up as something else. And I was always just uncomfortable around them. And like when I went to Disney World when I was 10 years old, I never once got a picture with Mickey Mouse or any of the characters. I didn't want to go near them. I knew they were just adults, and there was someone in that costume that was, like you can't see him. And maybe it was the fact that I had two older siblings, and they were probably telling me that. They're like, do you think, Mickey Mouse, do you think there's a guy in that costume or a girl in that costume? And I'm like, well, I just thought it was Mickey Mouse, but now I'm like looking at it from a different perspective, and I'm like, yeah, it's just an adult. And I'm like, I don't.
Your older sisters are like, the real Goofy died in 1978. That's just a guy in a costume.
He smoked too many cigarettes. And some say you can still smell the nicotine on the outside of the costume. Like, I was at like my nephew's birthday party like a year ago, and my sister-in-law hired a guy who was dressed up as Spider-Man, and he was in a full Spider-Man suit with the mask and everything, so you couldn't see his face. And he came to the party, and she paid him like, $150 or $200 to show up for an hour and be Spider-Man and play with all like the 3 to 5-year-old kids. And all the kids loved it. And I'm just sitting there on the couch, kind of just watching everything. And like, he was really good. Like, he played with all the kids. They had fun. They like, I don't like I didn't understand or I'd never seen anything like it, but I'm like, wow, I'm like that guy was actually like worth it. Like he was talking with all the little kids. You could tell he was like a professional. He was good at it. Um, like he made like she found him on Facebook and he had a bunch of good reviews and like you can see how he gets really good reviews and he can charge, like $200, for an hour and like little kids loved it. I don't know. I thought it was interesting because I'm like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And I really thought when I heard like, oh, there's Spider-Man's gonna show up, she's paying an adult in a costume. I'm like, oh, this is gonna get weird and creepy real fast. That's what I was expecting. But like it wasn't, it was totally normal. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Uh, Winnie the Pooh, there was a version of it where it wasn't animated. It was like people in costumes, but the mouth would at least move. And so I wasn't as bothered by that. That was okay. Um, is it Bear in the Big Blue House or something? You guys ever hear that? It's like a kids thing.
I've heard of it, but I've never watched it.
No, I have no idea.
that that's cool too, because again, animatronic face or whatever. It's just that I remember as a kid they would show like, oh my god, Disney World or whatever, and then the last shots would be like a mascot Disney Mickey Mouse waving, and part of me was like, hey, it's Mickey Mouse, but then I'm like, he's not saying anything, he's mute. That's really bizarre to me. So it was very much like I think I was more, I didn't believe that while I still believed in Santa sitting on his lap. You know what I mean? That was just a little bit more realistic for me. Yeah. Oh, I remember one time there was a parade and us kids got to jump on the parade with Smokey the Bear. And I remember my brother was like, he was so like, we were both so young, but he's like, Smokey, do you start forest fires? He wanted to say, do you prevent forest fires? But he was just like, do you start them? And Smokey looked at him and he just shook his head, yes. My brother was like, oh my God, he starts forest fires. And it stuck with him for a long time. He's like, that he didn't know the word. Oh my God. He didn't.
Prevent? Only you
Oh
can
my.
prevent forest fires.
Yes. Well, prevent. No, it wasn't that either. No, he was like, he's a hypocrite, but he didn't know how to say hypocrite. But I remember growing up, he was just like, he starts fire. He doesn't prevent them. You know what I
mean? I met him. He said he starts fire.
It's an inside job.
Oh, God. Yeah. Anything else?
I will say with like sports teams and sports teams mascots, if you look at like professional sports like NFL, NBA, MLB, you have teams like the Milwaukee Bucks that have like Banjo the Buck, and he's a guy in a deer costume. And they're all stupid, but at least the Bucks have a guy in a deer costume. The Bulls have a guy who's dressed up as a bull, and it makes sense. But the problem is not every team has something that you can dress up as. So you have like the Tennessee Titans, and there's like they have like a coyote or a wolf or some gray-haired animal that I don't know what it is, but he's their mascot. And I'm like, that's what is that? And then you have like the Phoenix Suns, like the sun, you can't have someone dressed up as a sun, but what then they have like it's like a big gorilla, a dude in a gorilla costume. And I'm like, you guys, you're just grasping at straws when it comes to your different mascots because you don't have a team name that can like facilitate a good mascot that makes sense. So like it just blows my mind. I think I was at like Oklahoma City Thunder and they have, I don't even remember what it is, but it's like a bison or something. Like it doesn't even make sense. Like I don't know. The mascots they have, they don't make any sense. Everybody's just watching them, but they're just like, I feel like there's like a dozen kids in the crowd that care. None of the adults care. Like they have cheerleaders, like I'm gonna be more focused on that. I mean, that's more my thing than a guy in a gorilla costume. Like, I don't care.
God, I wonder how long you can stay as a mascot, you know? Like how interchangeable are is, how long can you hold on to that job? Does it pay well? Like, yeah.
Do you think that like they get bored after like, yeah, I've been with Phoenix for 4 years, but I'm gonna go sign a new deal in Denver, and then I'm gonna be a Nugget or whatever their mascot is. And then they're because like the NBA ones, they'll like have trampolines and they'll jump off the trampolines and dunk the ball, and they'll do like crazy stunts and like acrobatic stuff, which is it's something like it's more than like a football game or a football. He's just running around and maybe he'll wave a flag or something like that. That's about it.
I do like the mascot race at a baseball game when, especially when they like play dirty and they like trip each other and stuff. Like,
I like the Milwaukee Brewers where they have the sausages. They have like a Polish sausage and then a bratwurst and then a hot dog, and they're all like in the wiener costumes. But I think those it's all like fans, and then
Right.
they have the fan. They dress them up in these costumes, and then they make them run the bases.
Oh my gosh. Conor McGregor was doing some sort of promotion and there was a mascot there and they were like, "Hey, punch the mascot." So he punched the mascot in his costume face, but it still went through and knocked him down, like really fucked him up. That was nuts.
oh,
Poor
you just
mascot.
reminded me of the end of Ace Ventura.
Yeah, it was like a giant bird or something, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, that's the end of it. Let's take off these big costumes. Let's end the show. YouTube, like, subscribe, comment if you're there. Go to a few GoldilockBears.com and tell your friends about us before it's too late. And I was Fitz a Cloud.
Tell them to tell their friends about us. Make a 5-star. I'm John Nemitz.
Don't let them guys tell you what to do. Like just do your own thing. David Lauer.